without further ado, she's going to delve into the world of gods and monsters. Laini Taylor.
Anyways, I saw she had a little miniature doll.
Hi guys, thank you so much for coming. It sounds like the mic is working today, so that's good. So thank you, Michaela, for the introduction. I am a writer, and some writers are performers, but most of us are like people and speaking, and so that's me. And usually when I do book events, it's very different atmosphere. It's like at a bookstore, and you know, people asking questions or whatever. And I just thought I was super excited to be invited by Spoken Word this year, but I didn't want to do the same kind of event I usually do at a bookstore. So I was thinking, what should I do? Well, I'll write a story or something like that. But then just by chance, while I was thinking, what kind of a presentation should I do? I got this weird letter in the mail that I had inherited something in the will of a relative that I had never met. So this was like my great aunt Eleanor. She's my grandmother's sister, and she was sort of the black sheep of the family, and lived in the woods out in Humboldt County, like in the redwoods. And there's a lot of stories about her, which I didn't really know what to make of them. People say that she was haunted, and I just kind of thought that meant like emotionally, but it turned out to be, literal. So what I actually had inherited from this aunt that I had never met was like a ton of ghosts that she had collected over her lifetime, because they flocked to her, and she would kind of give them a home and keep them. And so all of a sudden, my husband and daughter and I are like swimming in ghosts. We have so many ghosts. So I thought, well, perfect. I will rehome some ghosts. So I'm gonna need some volunteers to be brave and maybe take some ghosts off of my hands. So I'm gonna unpack them here. There's a little charm that kind of each one is temporarily bonded to, and if you take possession, they'll be yours until you convince someone else to take them, like willingly take them away from you. So be aware. Mostly they're pretty nice, but I can't really account for what the effects of having this ghost following you around will be. My monster lunchbox here. So this is what they look like. There's 8 of them, and so I'll call up some people to choose one, and then you can like kind of open it and show what's inside, and then I'll tell you about that ghost, okay?
Only for certain.
I'm going to lay them out right here. They're really pretty. And there are a few things, the ghosts maybe aren't like totally appropriate for children, but I have a few fairies. They're not fairy ghosts, but they're sort of fairy essences for kids at the end if anybody wants any. Okay. My very important list of which ghost belongs to which envelope is missing. So hopefully I'll remember. Otherwise, you might be like, this ghost is not at all behaving as I expected. So just be warned. All right. Do I have any volunteers? Scanning. All right, good. I think that we'll have 8 willing volunteers. Yes, they're in the green. Yes. Yeah, with a hat on your lap. Yes. Come on up. Okay, no, so you want to come down here and like you can can maybe, really kind of look at them. You can, lay your fingertips on them and see if you get any like sympathetic vibrations from any of them, or just visually, which one you think you would like to take home with you. Okay, this one. All right, now let me look since I'm missing my list. It's the fairy halls one. Okay. I have glasses in my reading glasses in my flowers. So you want to open it up? Very nice. There's business cards in them as well that say Laini Taylor, purveyor of fine ghosts and fantastical tales. So that'll be like a new business is born. All right, so what's your name? Molly. You have chosen the ghost of Alessandro Diabolo, who was a low-ranking noble in the court of Don Ferrante of Naples, also known as Ferdinand I, who is thought to have been the real-life inspiration for Prince Charming, as immortalized by Renaissance courtier and fairy tale collector Gian Battista Basile in the first ever written version of the Cinderella tale. Okay, so Don Ferrante was illegitimate, and so he was compelled by his father's noble allies to choose his bride from among their daughters at a ball. He made his choice, but the girl got cold feet, like literally, perhaps, so she ran off, leaving one shoe behind, famously. And you know the rest of the story. But this isn't that story. This is not about the prince. This is about young Alessandro, our ghost, who was the prince's retainer, and as such was the one tasked to carry that slipper from house to house on a cushion, right, to try to find the missing girl. Which the slipper was not glass, by the way, but it did have Venetian glass beads on it, which were very precious. So Alessandro did as he was bid, and for days he carried that slipper around. He'd never seen so many feet in his life. His head swam with them, and it wasn't like in the fairy tale where the slipper was so impossibly small that it could only ever fit one weirdly small-footed girl. It was smallish, but a lot of girls had small feet, and they all claimed to be the missing maiden. So it was, tricky. Except for one young woman who declined to try on the slipper. And he thought, well, maybe this is her, because clearly she doesn't want to marry the prince, and now she won't show me her feet, whatever. But she says, I wasn't at the ball, I don't dance. Which put Alessandro in a difficult situation, right? Because he didn't like to insist that the girl show him her feet, but his lord would if he didn't. So he appealed to her compassion, and the young lady relented, and drawing up her hem, offered him her foot, which was not a human foot at all, but a bird foot. Yes, so clearly this is not her slipper. So it turned out that the young lady, whose name was Simonetta, had bird feet as a consequence of having been cursed at birth, accidentally, in fact, by a drunk fairy who took a wrong turn, and who gotten lost and cursed the wrong baby. So Alessandro was able to strike Simonetta off of the list, which he did quite gladly because he found her lovely and would be very sorry if she married his boss. So he didn't find the girl, but it turned out that his entire mission had been a huge waste of time because that girl turned herself in. She never explained why she ran off because she was too embarrassed. She had just had to pee really bad. And the absurdities of propriety had prevented her from saying so. And so the whole thing just got really out of hand. She was just too embarrassed to come forward. Eventually she did, and it all ended happily ever after. And the princess, the maiden became the princess, and the prince, and then Alessandro and Simonetta were married, and they all lived happily ever after. So you are now the proud owner of the ghost of Alessandro Diabolo. I don't have a lot of notes on, how he might behave. I doubt it'll be anything bad. He was courtly, he had good manners, so it's probably pretty good. But if you want anyone, if you want to transfer it, you just have to read someone the story and have them willingly take it. Thank you, Molly. Thank you. One ghost down, 7 to go. All right, maybe from over here this time. Yes, in the blue, in the turquoise. Yes, thank you. Please come up. Hello, and what is your name? Lisa. All right, so take your time to take a look at the ghosts and see if any of them really speak to you. Okay, nice. I'm gonna hold that up and you can open it. And I know which one this is. Okay, so this one is the ghost of Nan Olivetti by way of my cat, Queequeg, which is an interesting story. And this actually was not part of the original bequest from my aunt. This one came to me, on its own once I had the ghost in the house. All right, so the story here came along when Queequeg passed away, and it was only then that I learned the truth, that all along, my beloved cat had harbored the reincarnated soul of a very naughty old woman. He was a very naughty cat, so it was less surprising than it might have been, but still a bit of a shock. Okay, so here's the story. Nan Olivetti died in Toledo, Ohio at the age of 99, and when her heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, which you might think only happened in ancient Egypt, but is in fact very much still in progress, Anubis saw that it was too heavy, and he would have passed it straight to Amit to be devoured, had Thoth, I'm looking at my daughter, not held up one elegant finger and said, "Wait." Thoth does that sometimes. He's the ibis-headed god of writing, magic, and wisdom, and he's kind of like Anubis's secretary, and he's just a lot more curious than Anubis about the souls they judge, and also more conscious of shifting cultural context, for which reason he employs consultants, living mortals who can help two ancient Egyptian gods make more informed decisions about the souls of, about whose ka gets devoured or not in, today's world. So here they are holding the heart of Nan Olivetti, and Amit is sitting there with his giant maw open waiting. And Thoth sees that this old Ohio grandma was responsible for 5 secret murders that no one ever knew about, except briefly the victims. So 5, that's a lot of murders. But they were all total assholes. So how do you weigh that, right? So luckily for Nan, the consultant on duty was a woman named Marie von Suskel, who was undergoing a really nasty divorce from an asshole and was inclined to be sympathetic. Literally 10 minutes earlier, before the shift change, it would have been when Louis Tremblay, a pedantic Frenchman, moral absolutist, and asshole, and it would have been straight into Amit's mouth for Nan Olivetti. Instead, Marie argued for her, and so eloquently that Anubis was actually like, yeah, assholes are totally the worst. And he sentenced Nan Olivetti's ghost to 10 years working for him, killing assholes. And so she served her time as a ghost assassin and did the world a great service. Antonin Scalia? Nan. Rush Limbaugh? Thank you, Nan. As to how she came to be Queequeg, that is standard procedure for assassins. Basically, guilt can build up, even in an assassin, making the soul heavy, and there's no way they're going to pass the feather test. So they're reincarnated as cats, because cats are immune to guilt, and just one life is all it takes to purge all of that off, and then they're good to go. This is the ghost of Nan Olivetti by way of Queequeg, ghost assassin. So I think, she was a badass who put up with nothing from anybody, and so, she might not be bad to have around. So thank you. Did you tell me what your name was? Lisa, yes. Thank you, Lisa, and let me give you your story. I might need an assistant. Is there an assistant? assistant in the audience. All right, my daughter's like looking the other way right now, like our Siberian Husky used to do when you looked at when you said her name, she would like look away. That's my daughter right now. Okay, her friend came up. Thank you, Coral. This is my other daughter. So if just you could look through these for the ghost of Nana Olivetti and then be like more on top of it, so I can fumble a little bit less. Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes. And I don't know if you guys could see it, but there's a funky brooch in there. So. I don't know, Coral's not doing so well so far. No, it's great. Thank you, Coral. And now you'll have time to look through them, so you'll be, you don't have to like stay up here, but you could like sit down right there or up the side or whatever, as you're comfortable. Or even just, yeah, all right. Okay, next ghost. Scanning, scanning. I guess, how about right here in the black hat? Hello, sir. How are you? Awesome. Good, thank you. And what's your name? Andy. All right. So we have 6 ghosts remaining. Oh. All right. This is a good one. It's got a sequoia cone on the front of it, so it's pretty. I'm pretty sure it is. Oh, yeah. This is the ghost of Sir Titus Tiberius Babsley. And there's a coin in there of Notre Dame Cathedral. I don't know why, because he wasn't French. But we don't really know why he was bonded to the objects, why they were bonded to the objects that they are. But yeah, you don't have to be French to love Notre Dame Cathedral, right? All right, so he was born of humble origin in 1852 to a night watchman and a baker's daughter, but rose through the ranks to be knighted by Queen Victoria in her twilight years for service to the realm in his capacity as the head of, indeed as the sole founder and agent of, the Garden Division of the British Time Travel Service. Now, if you were a British Time Travel Bureau, if you were unaware that the Time Travel Bureau had a garden department, you're not alone. It's not one of the sexier departments, and it seldom gets into the papers. So this was in the heyday of the TTB, before the disastrous Rossignol affair brought about the worldwide tightening of time travel regulations that agents still complain about today. Back then, there were missions galore, so much meddling with the threads of time, and within the agency, every kind of maneuvering imaginable, like ass-kissing, backstabbing, gaslighting, the works. But Titus wasn't like that. While other agents vied for prestige postings in the War Branch or Scandals Division, replacing regimes, pulling puppet strings, like erasing countries off of the map, flossing royal misdeeds out of the teeth of time, he was quietly building up the Garden Division from scratch. So what did gardens have to do with time travel? He was laughed at insofar as he was even noticed. But people were not laughing for long. Providence intervened on his behalf when Queen Victoria, after a visit to Kew Garden, was heard talking rapturously to her faithful servant, John Brown, servant and maybe lover, no one's really sure, about the splendid pagoda tree at Kew Garden. "I wish we had one like it at Windsor," she said. "We can have one planted," replied John Brown, but the Queen only looked melancholy. "Do you know how long it takes trees to grow? Would that I had done it 50 years ago." Now, the TTV chief, who happened to be visiting on War Office business, overheard her and paid Titus a call. Within days, there was a mature pagoda tree on the grounds of Windsor Castle. Queen Victoria was delighted, and that was a true birth of the Garden Division, whose motto is, "The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago." Thank you, Andy. So if you're a gardener, I think that you will get some help from Sir Titus. All right. Next ghost inheritor. Yes, right here. Hi, what's your name? Yana. Welcome, welcome. 5 ghosts remaining. I'm gonna hold that up. It's a skull and it says dread and unease. And there's a cameo necklace in there as well. All right, so here. right. There's no like way to reach me on my new business card because ghosts don't need the internet. Yeah. Okay. This is the ghost probably known in ghost collector circles as the somnambulist's apprentice. No one knows his name, though maybe he'll tell it to you. Some claim he's just an urban legend, that the somnambulist never existed and so never needed an apprentice, but others believe I do. It's not a pretty story. The somnambulist, that means sleepwalker, was a mysterious gentleman whose unique ability was much in demand in Victorian London. There's a lot of ghosts that come out of Victorian London, you know. They like to stick around. So you see, if you fell asleep in the presence of the somnambulist, he could enter your dreams, find things for you and bring them out. Lost objects, the answers to mysteries, names you'd forgotten, the song your mother used to sing to you, things like that. The treasures of your own subconscious, the song are carried forth into the waking world. He was very discreet, as he would have to be, considering all he must have seen in his clients' dreams. And then there was the matter of nightmares, right? As a young man just starting out in his trade, he had built himself as a nightmare fighter, and he'd go in and battle the monsters of the wealthy. He was good at it. He even defeated a dragon harassing Lady Dalrymple and carried out its head, which he mounted on her wall. It was a great conversation piece for many, many years. The worst of his scars, though, and he had many, were from the bite wounds he sustained from an attack by undead Napoleon. In the nightmare, bite wounds sustained from an attack by undead Napoleon. In the nightmare of Lord Pelham Newton, Duke of Newcastle, whose nanny had terrified him with a boy with threats that if he wasn't good, Napoleon's corpse would come and eat him. Well, as you can imagine, as the somnambulist grew older, he became less keen on the nightmare jobs, preferring the finding to the fighting, you know, less risk, more reward. But his clients still clamored for the nightmare service, so he hired an apprentice, kind of like plumbers, you know, hire scrawny young apprentices to get into the hard-to-reach places, right? Very little is known about the lad. He was a workhouse boy and muscle for hire. He was rough around the edges and so good with his throwing daggers, it was said he could carve an apple into a rose from across the room. He was also devastatingly handsome, with eyes as green as beach glass and an unexpectedly sweet smile, which may account for the epidemic of nightmares that began to plague the ladies of London, who had never been so afflicted during the somnambulist's solitary tenure. The apprentice was much in demand. Were there dream dalliances? Maybe. Does it count as an indiscretion if a lady flirts in her dreams, shares a kiss in her dreams, perhaps, with a handsome tradesman? She was not really doing it, is she? Now, Lord Robert Gascoigne Cecil, the villain of this story, the Marquis of Salisbury, found the whole business disgusting and would never have let the young man within a mile of his lovely young bride Constance, no matter how bad her nightmares. Pretty bad, and they were all of him. He menaced her dreams as he menaced her waking life, and she bore it as best she could. When she visited her sister, though, that lady was incensed and hired the somnambulist apprentice for her in secret, of course. And for a blissful week, Lady Constance knew sleep untroubled by the shadow of her husband's menace, and sweetened by the apprentice's smile. There was no dalliance, only gratitude, no kisses, only kindness. But her lady's maid was her husband's spy, and wrote to him about what was going on. So he arrived in the night. This is grim, but I have to tell you, he strangled his young wife in her sleep, and the apprentice was trapped in her dreams. The somnambulist searched for him, walking every corridor of sleep that he knew, but that particular corridor had closed forever, and the young man was lost, or so it seemed. But a funny thing happened a year later, on the anniversary of the crime, for which, shock of shocks, the murdering Marquis had paid no price. He was found dead in his bed. No wound on him, no sign of foul play, just a look of outrage on his face, and as a calling card, resting cool and bloodless on the pillow beside his head, one of the apprentice's throwing daggers. His body is still lost in that other realm. Perhaps it's still there, but you get reports every now and then of young women delivered of tormentors and a knife left on their pillow. So maybe he comes and goes between this world and that, and bodiless here, looking for doorways and dreams, soulless there, a beautiful green-eyed shell waiting for his ghost to return. Maybe you can help him find it. You go on nightly expeditions to the corridors of sleep, reunite them and usher them whole and alive back into the living world, which you would find very changed. One thing is certain, you will not have nightmares with this ghost around. Yes. Thank you, Yana. Okay, 4 ghosts remain. Christine. The lady with the wings. Okay, she goes straight for. Let me remember which one this is. Okay. So this is the ghost of one Frederick Carnival, a smooth-talking whiskey salesman who, on a business trip to Havana in 1951, spent all night dancing in the ballroom of his luxury hotel and had the time of his life. Probably. His memories of the evening were pretty vague afterward. What he never forgot was how, in the morning, feeling a bit peculiar, and not in the usual way of hangovers, he laid an egg. It was a very pretty egg, the color of a sunset, but that failed to quell his consternation. In a panic, he tried to flush it down the toilet, but it got stuck and hatched. Now, Mr. Carnival was long gone by this time. He was at the airport in a flop sweat, eager to be gone. He'd nearly convinced himself that this never happened, though he could not account for the curious pain in his rear, and was trying his best to ignore it, though he was shifting very uncomfortably in his seat, because the first time you lay an egg, you know, is the worst. I hear, the first time you lay an egg is the worst. Yes. Okay. So his plane was delayed by a tropical storm, and so the thing that had hatched from the egg found him. What do you guys suppose it was? Any guesses?
Dragon.
Any guesses? Dragon here? Well, it was his shadow. So he hadn't noticed that it had been missing all morning, and now it took up its place again as if nothing had changed, but something had definitely changed. Frederick Carnival had given birth to his shadow, which now took on physical form in the world, and with it, a degree of autonomy. It could leave him, go its own way, which it often did, being quite contrary, though it always returned from its adventures and brought him souvenirs, which were usually shoplifted or stolen in some way, such as the enclosed spoon, from which it had watched with much delight Sophia Loren eating chocolate mousse in the Café de l'Opéra in Paris. So thank you for taking Frederick and his shadow. So I would watch your shadow if I was you, because it's kind of a 2-for-1, maybe. Thank you, Christina. Next ghost adoption. Yes, in the red. 3 to go, 3 to go. And what's your name? Laum. Nice to meet you. I love your mushrooms. Please have a look. Like lace and maybe a wedding ring. All right, so this is the ghost of the widow who lived up on Maiden Peak and made magic lace from passing storms. Her name was Agnes Blythe, and before she was a widow, she was a wife. That's how that works. But her husband was the sly kind of mean. He saved all his nastiness for her. No one else ever saw it. They just thought he was great. Everyone loved him. except for the sky, who hates liars, and who, in a fit of contempt, flicked a lightning bolt his way and set Agnes free. So she moved up the mountain to be nearer to it, to the sky, which set tongues wagging. And maybe the sky was her lover, and maybe they were just friends. It's none of our business. She was free, and she was happy, and she grew powerful up there. Folks said that by the end, she wasn't even human anymore, and who knows, maybe she was part sky. She could see in the dark, even into dark hearts, and when she smiled, you could glimpse stars glittering between her teeth, which were sharp and translucent like crystals. Folks would make the long climb up to see her, bringing offerings of cake and wine, and if she felt like it and there were clouds enough, she would crochet them some lace to heal their ills. Bad marriages, barrenness, unwelcome attentions that all other ordinary means had failed to dissuade, and it always worked. She wouldn't take coin for it. She had no use for coin. She needed nothing, not even the cakes and wine, though she did enjoy them. And if she refused you, that was that. Agnes never changed her mind. A man tried to steal some lace from her once, and she turned into a bear and swatted him so hard, he flew off the mountain and made a small crater in the cemetery right exactly where he had just purchased a plot. The gravedigger just had to fill it in. The funeral was thinly attended. But so was Agnes's when her time came, but the sky was there, and that was all she needed. So thank you. Thank you. We have 2 to go. I wish I had one for everybody. Yes, sir. In the sunglasses, yes. Okay. 2 left. All right, this one, okay. Ooh, so there's some black feathers in there. And a sapphire and diamond necklace, completely authentic. So this is the ghost of Viorica Cosma, the Romanian girl genius responsible for the Corvidae virus that in the 1970s turned a full quarter of the population of Romania into crows. An event that was hushed up by the Ceausescu regime and so remains little known to the rest of the world. Viorica was only 12 when she began dabbling in gene splicing, and by 14 she had a strange menagerie of chicken, foxes, and rat beetles running around her laboratory, which was in the crypt of an abandoned church. The ethics of the procedures were questionable, but no one was paying her much attention, and really, how much harm can a child scientist really do? She later claimed it was an accident when she turned herself into a crow, but she was lying. She wanted to see if she could. Like, that's the great question of science, right? To all of our dismay. It was an accident, that it was contagious, though. So she didn't realize it when her first time out flying, which was awesome, she spotted Ioana Ursu, who used to tease her in school, flew down to harass her and infected her. So Ioana spread it to her family next, and then it was chaos. It was just crows everywhere. It says a lot about Viorica that even in crow form, she managed to develop a cure. Within a few months, nearly everyone was human again, though some of them had already flown off. To this day, you'll hear reports around the world, maybe now keep your eyes peeled for it, of little clusters of disappearances, a whole family or like a kindergarten class, say, with a corresponding boom in the local crow population, though no one really tends to correlate the two phenomena. So as for Viorica, after the cure, she found she missed being a crow so much that she reinfected herself with a new laboratory strain of the virus that she had made uncontagious. And she lived the rest of her life that way, becoming, in 1992, the first crow to ever receive a Nobel Prize. In fact, she was the first bird of any kind to receive a Nobel Prize, beating out the owls who are this close to cracking cold fusion. So thank you. Enjoy Viorica. Probably nothing will go wrong. All right, there's only one ghost left. Yes, in the rainbow hat there, yes. Or you guys can come up together. Do you want to take joint custody of a ghost? All right, perfect. What are your names? Misha and Isaac. Welcome, welcome. There is one ghost left, so I guess you get Emily Clem. open that up and tell us what you find. Yeah, so it looks like a little wind-up key and a butterfly, right? Okay. So this is the ghost of Emily Clement, who was born with a bad heart. And in 1911, where there wasn't much doctors could do about it, was it fortunate then that she attracted the notice of a fairy tinker who was taking a shortcut through her meadow to pass from one fairy queendom to another, from the gossamer to the eldritch, if you were wondering. Emily was 7, and she looked so pale and sad, bundled up, though it wasn't chilly, in a wheeled chair, watching with longing while her brothers played. The tinker, whose name was Oblong, and who was the cousin of the drunk fairy who accidentally cursed, the young lady in Renaissance Italy, by the way. So Oblong is what the eldritch queen called him because of the shape of his face, and so everyone else did too. That wasn't his real name, but fairy names are really hard to say. So. He felt the first pang of genuine sorrow that he had ever known. Sorrow is not a common fairy affliction. So he went on his way, but he didn't forget about this little human girl, and during his stay in Gossamer, in spare moments between mending fairy cookpots and clocks, he cobbled her together a new heart out of spare parts. It was part clockwork, part springtime, part milkweed, and part song, and it worked like a charm. He tested it first on one of the Gossamer Queen's mortal pets, who had fallen into disfavor on account of hitting puberty and getting zits. So, sad story, but at least, he was of use. So on his next journey through the meadow shortcut, Oblong sought out Emily and made the swap. He didn't ask her first, he just did it. And she experienced it like a curious dream, but it was real. When she woke in the morning, there was a little silver door in her chest, and a note from Oblong instructing her that her new clockwork heart was butterfly powered, and that she would have to swap out the butterfly once a week for a fresh one, impaling it on a silver pin in a little compartment in her chest, which Emily hated. Her health improved, the heart was a wonder. Doctors and engineers came from all over to ooh and ahd, and they tried to copy it, but they never could, and they still, for all of that, never believed in fairies. Emily lived to the age of 82, had children who had children who had children, and life was good, but it never got any easier for her to impale her weekly butterfly. As for her true heart, Oblong ate it. He had heard a rumor that eating a human heart would render a fairy capable of feeling love, but it wasn't true, and he never did. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Coral, my lovely assistant. So that is, those are all the ghosts I brought today. That there are a lot more at home, and I will probably rehome more of them in the future. Unless, not the ones that we get really attached to are super useful ones we're going to hang on to. But the dishwashing ghost, the cleaning ghost. Oh my goodness, the cleaning ghost, that is ours. Hands off, back off. I'm not sure what time it is, but does anyone, I don't know, I guess I didn't really introduce myself totally, but usually I write fantasy novels about gods and monsters and seraphim and chimera and war and kissing and things like that. It's been awesome. I have, I guess 11 books, 11 if we count the graphic novel and the children's book and the book of short stories and things like that. And they're published in like 35 languages, and it's been really, really incredible. I've been very, very lucky and blessed, and I hope you guys will check out my books. One thing I wanted to say is that these ghosts, break the fourth wall here, but these ghosts came about in, I'm a big believer, how many of you guys are writers? So I'm a big believer in playful writing exercises. That has been massively, massively, massively important to my writing development and my career. After I wrote my first novel back in 2005, I wanted to be a writer my whole life, but I was in my, 30s before I really got serious about it, and thought, if I want to be a writer, I should probably actually write. And those of you who have suffered from perfectionism and fear and stuff like that can relate to how quickly time passes while you're daydreaming about doing the dream. And so I got serious. I finished my first novel. It took me like 2 years, and at the end of it, I hadn't written anything else but that novel in that time, and I really wanted to write more short things just for fun. And this is the heyday of blogging, like in the early, it was 2005-ish. And I just happened to, is the time when this sort of early social media communities were forming way before Twitter and Instagram and even Facebook, right? And it was a very different feel than like Twitter and stuff. These real communities, they were long form kind of. And we started a prompt writing community called Sunday Scribblings. And every week, we put up a prompt and anyone could write and share. And it was just really wonderful. And so I started writing these weekly writing exercises for fun. And I started doing other writing exercises for fun. And this absolutely transformed my life, because I didn't think of it at the time as like being goal-oriented, because then it wouldn't have worked even if I had, right? This is going to eventually turn into the novel that will change my life. But that is what happened. I wrote a book. I wrote some of the short stories that I wrote from prompts tend to end up having a theme of kissing. And I thought, maybe I can, submit these to be published, in magazines or something. And my husband, who's an artist, we met in art school. So I went to art school to procrastinate writing. It was a very expensive procrastination, but it was good because I met Jim, who's an actual artist. And he said, well, or they could be a book, and I could illustrate it. And he did, and we pitched it to a publisher, and it sold as, it's my third book, Lips Touch. And it's 3 stories about kissing, kisses that have sort of profound consequences on the kisser's souls. And like completely freakishly, that book was a finalist for the National Book Award. And all of those stories came out of prompt writing exercises. And it wasn't just that. So then after that, that was amazing. But after that, I was thinking of the book that I wanted to write next. And I was trying to write something in the normal way, and I wasn't having any fun with it. It was like I was bashing my head against the wall, and I'd rather do anything else. I didn't even need a cleaning ghost because I would rather do anything else than write. So my house is very clean. And so one day I was like, I just need to give myself a day to write anything just for fun. And I sat down to write, and it remains the most magical, this would be in 2008, it remains the most magical writing experience of my life. I wrote all day, and the story just materialized, and it really felt like it came from nowhere. It was about a blue-haired girl, art student, and she was raised by monsters for reasons she did not know. She didn't know who she really was, who her real parents were, any of this. And they had this immediate dynamic. They were just so alive right away in a way that the characters of the book I've been trying to write were just not. And they were, they clearly were loving, but also kind of, real father-daughter relationship. And for reasons that I didn't immediately grasp, his name is Brimstone, and he dealt teeth for wishes. He would, he bought teeth from all kinds of disgusting humans, like hunters and grave robbers and stuff like that. They would bring him animal teeth, human teeth, and he would pay them for them in wishes. And I didn't know what Brimstone did with the teeth, and Carew didn't know what Brimstone did with the teeth, and I didn't know where the wishes came from. I didn't know anything. I just wanted to know. And so I set about figuring it out, and eventually that became my book, Daughter of Smoke and Bone, which sold really, really well at auction between 4 major publishers, and got optioned as a film, which was a really exciting adventure but didn't ultimately get made, and completely life-changing. And I thought at the time it really felt like those characters had come out of nowhere, but when I look back in my writing notebooks from that time, all of the seeds of those ideas were in those exercises that I had been doing for the previous couple of years. There was a wishmonger who lived under a bridge and traded wishes for teeth. There was, there was all the little elements were in there, and so I had just been planting all these seeds, and they all came together on that day. And long story short, these ghosts all originated from writing exercises as well. I went through my notebooks and found all these little tidbits and just maybe expanded some of them a little bit. And so, it's just, to me, that is a really, really important. I think a lot of writers, and I run a Patreon writing community. And so we have a weekly Zoom, and we do writing exercises online. And a lot of the writers who are trying to get published and who are working on their first novels, they feel very so goal-oriented and so driven that they don't want to spend any time on anything but their novel, right? And so they're if they have any time to write, they're going to work on their novel. and I, try to convince them that it will pay off hugely to do these, like 15 minutes a week even, just do these writing exercises. And so I'm always trying to spread the word about that because it's been so important for me and it's so much fun. So that is my spiel about writing exercises. I have no idea what time it is. 10 minutes. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. Oh yeah, the fairies. We'll do that at the very end, okay? Yes, thank you. Or I guess I can do that now. So in case people need to leave. If there are any kids who would like to adopt a fairy, they they're basically like they have a name in here and a little charm, and you can say their name and maybe they'll come, and you probably won't see them, but that doesn't mean they're not watching, okay? So there you go. Is there anybody else? Feel free to take one for a child as well if you would like. With questions, yes, back in the red. Yes.
Are all these stories going to be available somewhere to read here? Because, there's so much.
The question was, will these stories be available to read here? And I will probably put them online in some capacity. It was like really, it was so just this past, I just inherited the ghosts, so I didn't really have much time to think about what to do with them. But I loved doing this so much. I'm crafty, and so I love making the whole thing, and so I would actually love to keep doing that, making them. And it's a great reason to keep doing the writing exercises. Honestly, going through the notebooks and finding so many things I could use, because often, when you're writing a novel, all those little snippets in writing notebooks, they're not anything that you can do anything with, but actually I could, and some of those I wrote, 10 years ago or whatever, and so it was really fun, and it was a great reminder to me that, to practice what I preach and continue to do. I have this exercise I do called the attic notebook exercise, and it's so much fun. I started doing this like 30 years ago or something. I have I take a notebook, just a plain one, and make it not too thick, like a moleskin, a lined moleskin is a good one. And the challenge is to write in it for like 10 minutes every day. But you can't read what you've written. You can't look back, and you can't continue the next day with something that you wrote the day before. After you fill the notebook, you close it for at least a month. And then you can go back and read it. And I guarantee you will remember almost nothing that you wrote, and it's like finding a notebook in an attic, except you actually wrote it all. And a lot of it is from prompts. You could do a stream of consciousness, whatever, but I have a lot of different exercises that I do in those, and when I go back, it's like discovering these treasures. And so it's really fun. So that's my attic notebook exercise. And a lot of these were from that, and I didn't really remember them. And I was like, oh, I'm stealing this from my past self. This is awesome. Yes. So I will probably find a way to put them out there somehow. My website is an atrocity right now. It's like on my list for the summer to but if I put them up anywhere, I'll probably be on Instagram. Other questions? Yes. What am I working on now? Thank you. I recently finished a novel that I've been writing for like 5 years, and it's been the bane of our collective existence. I've been calling it Secret Book because even though I sold it even before I wrote it, it hasn't been announced yet. And it's my first. My other books are published YA, young adult fantasy, though in some countries they're published as adult fantasy. But just that. I started writing them at a time where young adult was like really, really big, and they are young adult, but also they're sophisticated enough to cross over. But this is my first officially adult novel with a different publisher, and I can't talk about what it is, but I'm waiting for my editorial letter right now from my editor. What's that? I don't know, at least a year. I also had a book come out last year with Jim. It's a graphic novel for kids called Billy Blaster and the Robot Army from Outer Space, which is a lot of fun. And then lately I've been plotting out my next novel and doing a lot of just exercises. And I started doing art again recently, which has been really fun. So I can't wait to be able to talk about Secret Book. I can't totally hear you, I'm sorry. Okay. The prog setting. So Daughter of Smoke and Bone, Karu, this blue-haired art student, she lives in Prague. And the story about that is that, so my first book was with Jim, and it was a graphic novel called The Drowned. And it came out in 2004 from Image Comics, and it was a ghost story, And after we had been at San Diego Comic-Con selling that, promoting it, and then we were driving back up north to Portland, Oregon, where we live. Oregon. You guys have heard of Oregon. And so you can tell I tell this story like in other places. And we were plotting out our next book, and it was going to be a vampire graphic novel. So, and this is like 2004 again, so this is all pre-Twilight. This is before there was like a big vampire boom. And we were like, oh, let's set it in Prague so we can go there and research it. So we went to Prague, and we spent like 9 days walking around, like figuring out where the vampires live and all of that stuff. And we saw like people running, doing the ghost tours that you can take in Old Town, and they'd be like, we'd see the ghosts like leaning against buildings, like looking at their phones, waiting for the next tour to come along. It was very funny, and we loved Prague, but we didn't end up doing that book. So I got some interest on my first novel, which is for younger readers, and just we left that behind. But then later, after that day where Karu came to exist, I was thinking, where does she live? And I was like, New York, I don't know. And then I already had Prague in me as a setting, and this is like a magical city that feels like a fairy tale but actually exists. Where I thought, how cool to be. And that book was really sort of like a wish fulfillment book for my teenage self. Like Karu, this magical life where Karu, she's an amazing artist. She can fight. She actually speaks like tons of languages because Brimstone gives them to her for her birthday. And I was like, these are all the things, all my fantasies, right? And so I created the cafe where she hangs out with her friend. It's in the old crypt of a church. It's called Poison Kitchen, and people always ask me if it's real because they want to go there, and I really wish it was. And so that is how it came to be set in Prague, because I really loved it. Yeah, and it felt like a way to create a fairy tale setting that's actually in the real world, where real teenagers go to art school. We maybe have room for one more question. Okay. Yes. I write almost exclusively in third person. I have a novella that goes along with Daughter of Smoke and Bone called Night of Cake and Puppets, and that's an alternating first-person POVs, and that was fun. It was different. And as I plot out my new book, I'm thinking of all the ways that I could make it not be like my last book, and not take 5 years. And one of the ways is like having one point of view instead of two. I don't know. I was thinking, what about first person? Because I don't know. So it's possible. I even thought about second person, the you voice, which I don't think I'll do for this book, but I'd like to try it sometime. Almost like a choose your own adventure book, kind of. We'll see. But it just is much more natural to me. I like doing a narrative voice, and I like writing I love word crafts. And I feel like in first person, it's more important to get a natural sounding voice. And I'm more interested in making beautiful sentences than natural sentences. Do you know what I mean? And so I also like to shift around between point of view, and like with every scene be like, whose point of view would this be coolest from? So having multiple point of view, third person, sort of near third person. And sometimes I segue into like a all-knowing narrator voice, and especially in my new book. Thank you. Yes, I believe I'm signing right here after, and I hope you guys will check out my books. There are probably ghosts in them. Yes. I am like the most ghost-obsessed atheist probably that you'll ever meet. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for coming, and thank you for taking ghosts. And if you ever feel like letting me know how your ghosts are doing, giving me progress reports. If you take your ghosts on vacation with you or whatever, photograph them in the wild, or if they get up to some like naughty stuff, or if you transfer them, please let me know. I'd love to know how it's going. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Once again, Laini Taylor. Great job. I love listening to you. For anyone else who would love to listen to Laini some more, she will be here for our 2:30 author panel as well. Right now, I think she's going to head out and do some signings right there. Her books are also available at the Fair Bookstore, but she won't be signing those ones, so get them here. All right, next up we'll have Tsunami Press, so stay tuned.